The question of this lecture is how far TikTok can provide a learning environment for sharing knowledge and information from research and science. It seems to be paradox on the first side that a playful platform like TikTok that is first and foremost designed for light entertainment should be used for learning and should be used for sharing knowledge, scientific knowledge, and research results. But as can be seen, the serious turn of TikTok also resulted in the adaptation and use of existing TikTok formats and for different purposes and for engaging audiences in dealing with serious topics and questions. Taking into consideration science communication, talking about science, education, and research on TikTok is slightly different than on other social media platforms. The reason for that is, of course, that we are dealing with short videos and therefore messages and complexity need to be condensed. And it is quite important to really speak the language of the platform. So how can science, how can research be kind of integrated into the playful environments provided by short video platforms like TikTok? And this quote by J.P. King in a study at the University of Toronto already gives some hints how we can understand the ways of communicating science on TikTok. He says, TikTok provides a fun place to create new forms of accessible learning shared outside of classrooms, textbooks, and conference halls. I think we should highlight some aspects here. So it first says that TikTok is not the same like a school. It's not the same like a book. It's not the same like a conference. It is a fun place outside of these educational environments. So it provides, and it must be a different kind of environment. And fun place, of course, refers to this kind of playful notion of dealing with information, this playful approach towards sharing knowledge, the primarily also dialogic logics of platforms like TikTok. So he also speaks about new forms. Yeah, so it is also the question of how can we, on the one hand, develop forms and formats that correspond the way of talking about science, and on the other hand, kind of match them or connect them to forms and formats that are popular on platforms like TikTok. And it needs to be accessible learning. This is also quite important. So of course it emphasizes learning. So it emphasizes really that it's about facts, that it's about information, that it should also be something that can be checked and is based on actually knowledge and certain expertise, but it needs to be accessible. Accessible means low barriers. Accessible means that you speak a language that the audience understands. Accessible means that it connects to the lives and to the everyday lives of the users. So this is a different form of communication than sitting in a lecture or seminar room and talking about research. Here on TikTok, it is more about finding engaging forms of exploring certain phenomena in a way that offers the viewers the possibility to really follow the argument, to look for visualization strategies, to really look for creative forms of exploration. And this video is quite interesting. It really very much kind of follows the approaches of art history. This creator is specialized on art, on paintings, on architecture, but it is also really kind of sharing kind of expert knowledge and making it or turning it into really a revelation that is interested in really kind of connecting and stimulating the curiosity of the of the viewers.
Now, I love the dark academia aesthetic, but did you know that Gothic architecture isn't actually dark? Gothic architecture, which was prevalent from the mid-12th century to the early 1500s, was brightly painted, airy, and filled with light. Stained glass windows were vibrant and carefully placed to ensure that the interior was almost completely illuminated. Trace amounts of paint, such as can be seen at Nuremberg, show the colors that were used all over. Amiens has an amazing light show which shows how it would have looked. The reason we think of Gothic architecture as dark is because of hundreds of years of soot and smoke from candles, as well as dirt building up and damaging the paint and dimming the light from the windows. Gothic revival in the 19th century tended to be darker due to their perception of Gothic buildings as dark, which was just because of the lack of cleaning. Let's reimagine the term dark visually, as the darker tones were made up by later authors who preferred the darker and more eerie aesthetics. This image from the cathedral at Chartres really shows the difference between the clean interior and the dirty one. We need to take the dark out of dark ages because they didn't exist in any form.
So how can teaching on TikTok actually work? So how can TikTok not, so to say, replace classical form of teaching in schools or universities, but so to say, expand them or offer, so to say, another option of disseminating and making visible and approachable learning content. As J.P. King from the University of Toronto states, TikTok offers enormous potential for the discovery of critical ideas. This is why using TikTok effectively is crucial. Sharing research with an audience outside of the academy brings together people with diverse educational backgrounds. TikTok offers an exciting new way to find like-minded thinkers, makes research accessible, and start important conversations. So the following video I created myself. It is actually not used for particular learning purposes on TikTok, but it is, so to say, something that that came out of my teaching, and that was an attempt to really try, so to say, to break down parts of my teaching in class into a video that should create interest and in learning more.
Did you know that the first films about the Holocaust were already made in the years directly after the end of the Second World War? This film, for example, was made in 1948 in Poland, and it was shot on location at the site of the former Nazi concentration camp in Auschwitz. It was made by a survivor, Wanda Jakubowska. This photo shows her during the shooting of the film in Auschwitz. She was shortly before liberated there, and she said that already during her time in the camp, she had the idea for this film. She wanted to make a film about her experiences and also about what had happened to her fellow prisoners. The film was later called Ostatni Etap, The Last Stop. The Last Stop significantly shaped our visual memory of the Holocaust. Wanda Jakubowska in her film already showed all the iconic scenes which we know from many later films about these events. We see the incoming train, we see the selection, we see the torture, we see the roll calls, we see many short episodes and scenes which also survivors testified about in the years after the liberation. For filmmakers like Konrad Wolf in Stars or Steven Spielberg in Schindler's List, Wanda Jakubowska's film became a very important reference for the ways how they depicted the concentration camps. The French filmmaker Alain Resnais, for example, used exactly this scene in his famous documentary Night and Fog from 1955. So, which films about the Holocaust do you remember? Do you want me to talk about a specific film? Just let me know.
So you can also see that here the video opens, so to say, with "Did you know?" So it really tries, so to say, to create certain attention and curiosity, and it also closes with offering a dialogue or with offering the possibility, so to say, to continue this exploration of films about the Holocaust together. So the essence, of course, is that actually the messages which we convey and the information which we convey need to be condensed and really kind of correspond the whole characteristics of these mimetic videos. This is also what Gigi Osler emphasizes when she describes the preconditions of teaching with TikTok. As a teaching tool, TikTok really forces you to drill down to the essential message, and how are you going to explain that message in a way that is engaging and educational within that 60 seconds. Yeah, so this is actually the core to condensing a message and to really kind of offering an entry point to certain aspects of research. In the following, I want to show and briefly discuss and introduce some modes of science TikTok. So what kind of formats are, what elements of short form videos specifically correspond with the idea of teaching and learning through short videos, of communicating science and research on platforms like TikTok. And important is that these short videos and these short video modes, so to say, trigger a certain form of engagement that correspond to the dialogic form of using TikTok, creating communities, creating, so to say, the possibility of connecting and sharing certain interests. And this is also what King emphasizes here in this quote: if watching YouTube is like sitting in a lecture, then using TikTok is like having a conversation. Yeah, short, direct, and you kind of continue then the exploration process, and somehow you are also, by the help of the algorithm, kind of integrated into a certain community of people with shared interests. Okay, so the first mode I want to introduce is the experiment mode. And I think it's quite obvious that the experiments fit perfectly to the idea of short videos, because an experiment is already something like a performance. Yeah, it is kind of a presentation. It is a form of transferring theoretical knowledge into something that is visual, that can be seen and that can be understood. It is always already a form of reduction and condensing. And this video shows very nice, so to say, how an experiment can be kind of not only documented, but actually kind of created with and through the camera in the short video.
I wonder how many breaths it would take me to fill up this incredibly long plastic bag. Do you think there's any way I can fill this whole thing up with one breath? I bet you I can. Stay tuned to the end to see the real answer, but let me show you the standard way of filling this up. We'll take our breaths. One hardly did anything. There's 10. I'm not even halfway there and I'm ready to pass out. Is there perhaps a better way to do this? Let's see. Let me take all the air out of the balloon. And now we're going to use something called Bernoulli's principle. We're going to blow into the bag, but we're not going to put our mouth right on the bag. And what happens there is as we blow in, surrounding air is pulled in as well to the low pressure area. This is Bernoulli's principle. Firefighters know about this. We'll talk about that in a moment. So here we go. One big breath. Filled up the whole tube. So I said firefighters use this too. If you ever want to get the air out of your room, maybe it's hot at night and it's the summer and you don't have an air conditioner, so you're using a fan, don't put the fan right in the window. Back the fan up just a little bit, and now it'll blow air out, but we'll also pull the surrounding air out with it. I love science. Have a great day.
The next mode is the explanatory mode. And of course, explanatory videos are not kind of typical only for science and education on TikTok. Explanatory videos are also used for conveying information, for explaining the background of certain topics and events. But explanatory videos offer also a great opportunity to focus on specific topics and to use material, usually through the green screen, with which the presenter interacts and thereby explains a certain problem or a certain phenomenon.
The Wall Street Journal just released an investigative report about TikTok's algorithm, in which they used a bunch of bots to suss it out. Most of what's here I think will not surprise you very much, but some of their findings connect very interestingly to things that we know about extreme behaviors on other platforms. So welcome to Tech Ethics class. So one of their bots was programmed to watch videos about depression and sadness all the way through, and this didn't take long.
Tucky96's feed is a deluge of depressive content. 93% of videos shown to the account are about sadness or depression.
You probably don't actually find this all that surprising. Maybe the speed at which it happened, or the fact that it was only based on watching videos and not any other engagement. But they also pointed out that their more generalized bots also tended to head down into niches. And this point that they start making about rabbit holes is where I got kind of interested.
Deep in the niche worlds of TikTok, users are more likely to encounter potentially harmful content that is less vetted by moderators and violates the app's terms of service.
So the less views that a video has on TikTok, the less likely it is to have been vetted by human moderators, and the less likely it is to have been reported by a bunch of people. So this is a really interesting point, that the more niche down your feed gets, the more videos you see with less views, which means the more likely you are to encounter harmful, violating content. And this actually made me think of some research about Instagram. Content warning, I'm about to talk about some research about eating disorders. So in this study, they looked at what happened after Instagram banned certain hashtags. You see the title up there, hashtag thigh gap, and it's spelled really weird. That's a lexical variation. So after Instagram banned the actual words thigh gap, people started creating these variations of the word. And one of the things that they found was that the deeper these lexical variations, the more harmful the content in these more niche down communities were. And of course, this also relates to things we know about YouTube, about how their recommendation algorithm can really send people down rabbit holes, like start off in video games, end up in Pizzagate. And they know that this is a problem so much that they're really trying to fix it, like to not send conspiracy theory videos to people constantly. My guess is that TikTok is working on this as well, but if you think about the relationship between YouTube and TikTok, TikTok is even more of a recommendation algorithm. Anyway, there's some interesting insights in this video. Most of it, I'm guessing, will be very familiar to you, but I'm going to find it really useful for teaching people who don't know how TikTok works.
Similar but different to the explanatory video is the lecture. The short video lecture is not in the same way kind of a dialogical, or kind of trying to stimulate the viewers to engage into a certain form of conversation like the explanatory video. And usually the lecture video also is more kind of frontal, in the sense that it really explains a specific context, and that it uses additional material kind of more in a presentation mode. Nevertheless, kind of lecture and explanatory can also kind of overlap.
China's Grand Canal is one of the world's largest and oldest artificial waterways. Parts of it date back to 500 BC. And for 800 years, it facilitated transportation between Beijing and Hangzhou. By 1820, 126 million people lived in the provinces connected to it. This was 15% of the global population. Even Adam Smith mentioned it in his Wealth of Nations. However, starting in 1826, use of the Grand Canal started to decline because of cheaper passageway through the East China Sea. Expensive maintenance officially ended by the 1850s. As one would imagine, the counties closest to that canal witnessed increased social turmoil and rebellion. These social costs were not considered when the Qing government decided to abandon the canal. A popular 19th century ballad lamented the closing of the canal, singing, "Broken the boat, disordered the world." Now, these are anecdotes. Wouldn't it be nice to systematically measure the over 500 counties covering hundreds of years and statistically test to see if the canal closures did indeed cause that social unrest? Just published in the premier American Economic Review, a fascinating paper by Cao and Chen does just that. After controlling for the commonalities of the same year, commonalities of the same county through time, climate changes, and a host of other controls, they find that counties adjacent to the canal saw more than twice as many rebellions compared to similar counties further away. So what was the mechanism? Perhaps the lack of water transportation limited Beijing's ability to hamper down rebellions. However, they don't find evidence to support this. They do find some other things. Closures slowed down development of canal market towns. Also, the effects are much smaller for counties with alternative trade routes. Finally, the canal no longer mitigated the risks from local negative economic shocks, the role that trade usually plays. It was the urban unemployed worker, sailors, the dock workers, who became the major groups who suffered and rebelled after the closure.
In the previous video about art history, it became already clear, I already tried to emphasize that these short videos really offer a great opportunity to really focus on a specific object, a specific aspect, a specific artwork, music, film, and review it in a critical way. So this form of kind of criticism that exemplificates something on a certain phenomenon, on a certain object, is another mode on TikTok, really kind of to create, on the one hand, interest, but on the other hand, to find something small that kind of is feasible for a short video, but still offers the possibility to share, so to say, a certain knowledge and a certain expertise.
How many times have you been to an art gallery, seen some paintings of bowls of fruit or nice flowers, and thought, nah, not for me? Compared to other genres of art, still lifes do tend to be ignored, treated like something your grandma would have on her wall and not something exciting or important. For the past 10 weeks, I have been making videos about still life artworks from the National Still Life Award at Coffs Harbour Regional Art Gallery. And in today's final episode, I want to tell you why still lifes matter, especially today. Throughout history, art has reflected the events that impact society. For medieval artists working during the Black Death, their worldview for understanding the disease that was ravaging Europe was religion. They depicted the death and the loss they were suffering as the work of the devil or as God's judgment of humanity. But for us today, living in the coronavirus pandemic, our perspective on our modern plague is far less biblical and far more introspective. As we've been forced inside into lockdowns and quarantine isolations, still life artworks offer a framework to examine the everyday objects in our lives at home up close, sometimes giving beauty and meaning to the mundane, other times prompting much larger philosophical and ethical questions about how we live. Still life artworks can literally reflect the stillness of our lives put on hold, and the sometimes claustrophobic uncertainty we have all felt during this pandemic. However, this traditionally humble genre also provides one of the most overlooked feelings of our time: hope. Looking at what is around you with present eyes might reveal the potential in all of us for change and the great capacity for making hope a reality.
Similar, of course, to the criticism videos, but still specific, is the book review video. And this connects closely to one of the most popular forms and formats on TikTok, and that's the book talk. Yeah, book talk videos are used among many communities and by very diverse users, and are a format to share reading experiences and to emphasize or to create interest in certain books or certain topics and literature related to those topics. So the book review in context of science is, of course, a great opportunity to highlight academic research and publications, but also, so to say, to stimulate interest in particular topics, which also offers a great opportunity of kind of accompanying, for example, explanatory or lecture videos by adding book review videos to these other videos, and thereby offering the users and the viewers the possibility to kind of continue their exploration and to really kind of delve into the actual research.
I come from scientists and atheists and white men who kill God. They make technology high quality, complex, physiological experiments and sacrilege in the name of public good. They taught me everything, just like a daddy should. And you were beautiful and vulnerable and power and success. Goddamn, I fell for you. Your flamethrowers, your tunnels, and your tech. I studied code because I wanted to do something great like you. And the real tragedy is half of it was true.
Both the criticism and also the book review video are ways of already kind of focusing and condensing particular aspects of science and research to a format that is suitable to short videos. And a similar thing happens with the anecdote, another mode I want to present. This, of course, is very typical for particular disciplines, like, for example, history, so that, so to say, an anecdote, a particular story, something kind of short, but which still sheds light on a certain phenomenon and so on, is in the center, and that you already kind of start with a very small thing that offers a certain framework, but it still kind of is a point of departure for reflecting about a larger problem or a larger phenomenon. In this case, it's also kind of combined with a stitch, and thereby also related to another form of kind of science communication and dialogue.
I'm supposed to be in economics class right now, but I'm outside shuttling shit around for the football team.
Hi, I'm an economics teacher at the college level, not at high school. Check this out. This graph looks at the percentage of teachers in each subject who are a coach or teach PE. And social studies, which includes economics, is by far the highest, more than a third of them. Now, this isn't inherently a bad thing. We've got a friend who's a great special education teacher who is also the high school football coach. But on average, primary issue, of course, is that high school teachers don't get paid that well. An economics major is going to make so much more in the private sector. Pay teachers more.
The last three videos I want, or the last three modes I want to introduce are actually kind of more self-referential in the way that they kind of are not focusing on content and are not kind of disseminating the results of research, or focusing on particular topics and themes, but they are, so to say, about science itself. They have this kind of self-reflexive, self-referential gesture of kind of focusing on the scientific professions and scientific environments themselves. The first is what I call the shout-out mode. The shout-out mode or shout-out videos want to emphasize the contribution of certain persons, emphasize extraordinary research, often shed light on overlooked, marginalized, or forgotten researchers and their contribution.
Remember those who made the vaccines possible.
Waiting impatient for me, and I was running far away. Would I run off the world someday? Nobody knows, nobody knows. And I was dancing in the rain, I felt alive and I can't complain. But no, take me home where I belong. I can't take it anymore. I was painting a picture.
The behind the scenes mode really kind of offers a glimpse into the life and work of scientists, scholars, researchers, and educators. They often accompany other videos. So when on an account, there is an emphasis on lecture or review or criticism or explanatory videos or experiments. They can be combined also with behind the scenes videos that give the whole thing a kind of human touch or emphasize a certain kind of focus or expertise by kind of exploring or focusing the scientific world and the science world itself.
Girls, come on! Leave the saving the world to the men? I don't think so. I don't think so.
Live fast, die young, bad girls do it well. Live fast, die young, bad girls do it well. Live fast, die young, bad.
In a similar way, also the irony mode works by kind of in a more kind of funny or satirical way, kind of critically reviews, so to say, certain behaviors, rituals, or aspects related to science.
Good evening, students, faculty, and distinguished colleagues. I am deeply honored to welcome our guest speaker, Ambassador Dr. Cecil B. Schlotterman, Esquire, here to the Judith I. Glasserman Center for Applied Computational Ethics. Dr. Schlotterman is the Hubert L. Crevis Professor of Cognitive Theosophy at Kirwan State University. He's held fellowships from the University of Delaware at Flea Hill, the Gumption Institute of Public Affairs, and St. Kevin's College. He was recently named one of the region's top 30 most improved thinkers by the Journal of Advanced Packaging, and his work has appeared in the Martinez Review of Books, Larry's Gazette, and The Atlantic. Today, he will be speaking about his new book, The Disruptive Toll, Loud Noises and Their Relation to the Human Disposition. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up for Dr. Schlotterman.
To conclude, science and education on TikTok needs really kind of to break down and condense the messages that should be conveyed, but they are a great possibility to really kind of explain and share knowledge and expertise by communicating science, but it needs to be done through kind of small visual interactive dialogic formats, and be based on modes that really offer access for a broader audience beyond the classical learning environment in school or universities. So I think this is also what Gigi Osler emphasizes with this quote: "If I can create information that is science-backed, evidence-based, and educational, and explained in a simple way, then if that helps one person, we've made a difference in hopefully one person's life." And on that notion, I think it would be really interesting to now explore the potential of short-form videos for education, for science, and for conveying research.